Well, part of it for me is my reputation is incredibly important to me. So when I'm out there meeting with a client, they need to know that I am an honest, ethical individual that will do anything on their behalf to make things right or to do the right thing. And that's incredibly valuable.
Hi there, my name is Dina Burke. I am your host today on the Daily Real Estate Syndication Show. Thanks so much for joining us. Today, my guest is Steve Futrell. Steve is a recently retired professional from the telecom industry. He was an entrepreneur who built his business back in the late 90s. He is a business professional, and really, he's the kind of guy that everyone needs on his team. His skill set is in relationships, strategic direction, negotiation, always looking for ways to change the dynamic of business and to drive advantages and values. I love when Steve talks about building more businesses under his existing one as the next natural step. Man, it really takes the pressure off of being an entrepreneur and just moving forth and creating different cash flowing mechanisms within your overall business structure. So I learned a lot from Steve. I just want to welcome him to the show today. Well, welcome to the show, Steve Futrell. We're so glad to have you here today. Thanks for being a guest.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Steve, it was so great to meet you when you were in town, a couple months ago or a month ago.
Yeah.
And some of the things that you shared when we got together really piqued my interest and I felt could add a lot of value to our listeners. So why don't you just give us a brief background about your career and then we'll dive into some of the things you're passionate about.
Absolutely. I graduated college in the late 80s. From a school called Eastern Michigan University, which is in the shadows of University of Michigan, literally less than 30 minutes away. So people are familiar with the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. This is Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti, Michigan. So a school of about 25,000 students. Also met my wife there. We started our journey after school, and I had a few different corporate jobs. One of them was with a subsidiary of Ford Motor Company called Geometric Results. And in working that, they had me working on this help desk. And I kind of migrated to the top, being a team leader, which got me involved in technology, specifically the phone system that was running this call center. That led to an opportunity at a company called Fujitsu, where I was selling large and phone systems to different corporations around Southeast Michigan. I was thinking a lot about that and where the money could be made and struggled with elements of corporate America and decided to go out on my own. So in 1995, with a partner, we started a company called Infinite Technology Solutions. He and I were in business together for about 4 years. We were literally on a plane to Las Vegas for an event and had made the business decision together that we were going to split the business. He wanted to take the business in one direction. I wanted to go in another. And we decided to split the business in half. Very amicable. So we're having this conversation literally on a plane. Obviously, we led up prior to that. What had happened, though, is that once we had decided that, we literally split the company in 6 weeks. And I started on my own.
How long had it been up until that point?
From 95 to 99, so 4 years.
Okay, wow.
And so we split the company, and I took over my half in July of 99 and had run it until I sold the business literally 2 years ago tomorrow. So that has been my primary company, Technology Solutions. We grew up from a local southeastern part of Michigan company to where we were doing business all over the world. We had accounts in Asia, we had accounts in Europe, we had accounts all throughout the United States. So, and we worked with our clients with VoIP phone systems, IT infrastructure, structured cabling, whatever they needed from a technological standpoint.
So let's go back to when you were about to take a leap and start your own business. Did you
Yes.
study business in school? Did you know what you were doing? Did you feel like, okay, I've got a plan, I've got a structure, I'm going to execute? Or did you look for people around you to do this with you? What was going through your mind when you made that leap of faith to do your own thing?
I wanted to be an entrepreneur pretty much my whole life, but had no idea what that meant, what it really entailed. So when I went out, I was going to go out on my own, and I ended up knowing this gentleman who was in the business, and he and I decided to partner. He already had a company, so we decided to partner where I have a 50% ownership stake of this smaller company that we were starting from scratch, which had zero business. So my wife wasn't working at the time, had just had our second child, had moved into our second home. And that's when I started. But having a partner like Jack Wilson, who is his name, he has since retired as well, was incredibly helpful because he had a lot of business knowledge and was helping kind of drive the process. So, we still to this day have a good relationship, thank God, and he's just a really good person. But yeah, he helped to guide me. I knew what I wanted to do. I studied business management through school, but until you're in it, I don't know that you really can have an appreciation of what it's all about. And I think most people talk themselves out of it because there are so many what ifs. We can sit there and inundate ourselves with, well, what if this and what if that? And what if I don't have money? What if I can't pay that? There's so many what ifs that it gets so scary that I think most people tend to shy away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the same thing. I mean, I kind of get really practical with all of it. I mean, my husband and I were even considering just something for our family, and we're like, should we do a pros and cons board? I mean, do you have any practical tools that you use when you're making a decision like that? I mean, that was a long time ago, but you're still and have been making decisions all along.
Correct. I just kind of sit down with it logically. My wife and I sat down as I was looking at this, and I said, this is what I have been doing. I've been doing this work. So why not just do it for us versus for a corporation? So that's what started the process. And then I started to look at anything and everything that could go wrong. And we sat down, and at the end of the day, I just said, look, I can do this for a corporation. And if all those things go wrong, I'm out of a job anyway. In this world, we have to perform. So I have to perform for somebody. And so I thought, why not take the chance? And I will say this about my wife. She was incredibly supportive throughout, because there was a point, we were probably 3 to 6 months into it, and we were not selling, performing. I mean, nothing. I had a lot of prospects, a lot of opportunities, but we had no business. And I just looked at her and I said, I've got a job opportunity. What do you think? And she said, this is your passion. This is your dream. Don't, do what you want, but don't just give up unless you truly want to. Versus having somebody that says, oh, I need to shop at the finest places and eat at the and all that. That's not our world. That's not who she was. And so it made the process. We were very comfortable living on nothing, living at home, not going out, not doing anything.
Yeah.
And, that's
that's the secret sauce of the entrepreneurial success, right? Just the fire of nothing under you.
Absolutely. And that's just simply where we were. Yeah. It was the way it was for years. And then, and then once it finally started to take off, obviously we were seeing some positives of all of that. And yes, I've been doing this now for a long period of time. So after that company, I ended up starting a company that was in the connectivity side, local long distance internet connectivity that played into that. I bought a building that we would rent from. I ended up starting a leasing company that we would lease our equipment through, things like that. So, but they were all logical next steps that didn't have tremendous risk involved.
I think that's so important that it's, I think sometimes we can listen to people's stories who have been entrepreneurs and have been successful, and you're like, man, you just did this and did that. But what you just said, I think is so key to remember. It's the logical next step. You're just looking for a way to monetize it that can leverage the overall benefit that you're providing. So how many years, just going back to your story a moment ago, were you and your wife kind of living on nothing before you started to see some of the fruit of the entrepreneurial spirit?
Well, it fortunately wasn't too long. So all of 95, so in April of 95 is when we started. We didn't make our first sale until like December of 95. So it took all of 96 of some success there to pay back all of the cost structure that we had lost in 95. So I would say it was probably 98 before we really started to reap anything out of it. And by that, I don't mean taking big chunks of money. I just mean mentally feeling like we've got something that's relatively stable.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't taking chunks of money out by any stretch because we continue to, and this is a hard thing, I think, for young entrepreneurs who want to live a certain lifestyle. When you're taking that money out and forgetting that you've got to pay taxes, or you've got other obligations, or you need to hire great talent, or you need to do the different things for your organization, you don't have the financial resources to do that. So you really need to leave the money in the business and then grow it from that standpoint. Be fiscally responsible.
Yeah. So let's take this opportunity to pivot to that. You are passionate about financial literacy. You've lived the life. You've obviously have experience. You've earned your stripes, but talk about that a little bit and your bigger picture. You said you've recently retired. Talk about how that plays into what you're doing now and how you are adding value and can add value to younger entrepreneurs who are coming in after you, or, even folks who are on the road right now.
Right. I think that part of the problem we really have in this country, we will teach people through education, through universities, or whatever the case, how to go out and make a living, how to go out and be successful. And then we don't tell them what to do when they have it. And we never have. And so if you grow up in an environment where it was a big spending environment, or you're living paycheck to paycheck or whatever, you have no concept on what to do once you get this money. So for most of us, it would be, okay, well, I'll buy a house, right? And then, some will invest in their 401k. But what about life insurance and the importance that might play, or real estate or investment properties, where that might play, investing on your own in the stock market and learning about that and what that might do for you. So there's so much that we miss in these young entrepreneurs. So what do they do with their money? They have some of it invested, typically, and it's part of their company. But there's nothing else there, because now I've got this excess money, but I really need that cool car, and I really need that cool watch, and I really need that expensive suit, and I really need to join the golf club, and you know what I mean? And so our money just starts to flow out. And I'm not saying any of those things are bad, and some of them I have done, but I've waited until my retirement and my wife's retirement were always maxed out. I waited until, I bought the building, which is a rental property, and I built my companies to produce cash flow. I waited until I was, purchased the insurance policies and funded the kids' 529s, and, all of these different vehicles that I could utilize to build wealth outside of my company. So the company was the driving force behind the income. Mm-hmm. And then it's, what do you do with the income? And I've said to my kids forever, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. So that money that I was able to keep, then I wanted it in different vehicles that would continue to work for us the rest of our lives. And in part, the type of company I had, most people are not, probably 80 to 85% of the companies like mine will never be sold. They're smaller companies, smaller technology companies. They're not big enough to attract the big attention, and so they won't be sold. So the buddies of mine that are still in the industry will probably be working this or passing it along. So I was fortunate to be able to sell my company, but not everybody can do that. So you have to be able to set yourself up for some of those what ifs in life. And that's where investing comes into play. And I think there should be classes, there should be, starting really probably in middle school, maybe sooner, of just the basics of understanding the money coming in, the money going out. And then, in our world, a portion of it went to our church, a portion of it went to different charities, as well as our investing and so on. But you can't even do those wonderful things if you don't take care of yourself.
Yeah, that's so good. Tell me how you guys pass those things along. You mentioned one comment you made to your kids, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. Were there any practical things that you all did in bringing up your own children and in implementing financial literacy as they grew and, wealth grew as well?
Sure. They had to work. And initially,
when?
Oh boy, 6th grade.
Okay.
Maybe 4th. I think my oldest was in 6th and my second was in 4th.
Okay.
And the building I was renting at the time, they had to clean. They were the cleaning crew. So they had to come in and vacuum and dust and clean the bathrooms and all of that. And then when I bought the building, obviously it evolved. The building that I bought was larger than the one that we were renting, so that became a little bit more challenging. But I think an element of it is to realize what hard work is, and to realize that when you're working hard for that money, what it can do for you, and so on. And to frivolously spend your money can put you in a deep hole. And thinking about and planning for the future is incredibly important. I'll ask my kids, tell me what's going to happen a year from now. Well, I don't know. Exactly. So you don't know if the tire blows on your car, or you need new brakes, or you need a new furnace in your home, or you need, these are just basic things in life. And if you don't have $1,000 or a couple $1,000 sitting in a bank account, that's an incredibly stressful situation. And I would argue half our population does not have that. And so we need to educate so that people understand. I owned properties in South Florida years and years ago. And the folks that lived there, some were Section 8, so that they didn't have a lot of extra money, and the government was helping to pay. But when you walked into those apartments, they had more than I had. They had big screen TVs way before I ever had anything like that, because I'd never paid that kind of money for it. There was every toy for the kids. There was, everything. So their money was simply going in the wrong places. So
yeah, I can identify with that. I grew up, my dad was a commercial developer, and we always drove the crappiest cars in the parking lot.
Right.
He owned office buildings, but he drove like a Volkswagen Rabbit for many years. And then he graduated into like an extended cab Ford Aerostar with box tape on the windshield. So I understand that. But I will say, like, the rub is hard, when you're starting to finally kind of create cash flow and freedom, it's hard not to lean into that. So I think what I hear you saying, and what I think is really good advice, if you find yourself in that situation, is to have a plan ahead of time. Ask yourself the question, when I get to this threshold, what am I going to do? So let's kind of pivot into some advice that you can also offer passive investors. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about allocating money to different asset classes. Do you have a system that you use? Has it evolved? Do you go on a percentage basis? What kind of deals do you like to invest in? And has that changed over time? That was a lot of questions all at once. I'll remind you.
It is. Well, I believe in diversification. I have some in the stock market, some that I would consider to be less risky, because it would be the big corporations, the Microsofts and the Apples and the Googles of the world, that are probably not going anywhere, and many others. I have really what I consider to be the up-and-comers. So this is very risky. And I get involved in that. Those smaller companies that a Tesla would have been years and years ago, but they're game changers. They're changing the industry. I'll listen to a little bit of Kathy Woods out there with her ARK investment strategy. Some of those type of companies that you think are just going to be game changers. So I invest in that side, and I invest heavily in some dividends, that side of the market. I also invest in insurance. And I look at insurance not so much as just a death benefit, but I look at it as a life benefit. I look at it as being able to structure my entire estate and make sure estate taxes are being paid, or if you have companies and there's allocation of things, you need to be able to make sure that there is liquid money at the end to be able to take care of things. So I use insurance as a strategy, and it's not term insurance. And then I invest in other businesses. I love working with other businesses. We're working with a development company that I think I shared with you when we were in Colorado. And there are two women that have started this company about 4 years ago. We invested in 2 years ago, and they're just hitting the ground running. I mean, they're just doing so many tremendous things. It's affordable housing is primarily what they do, but they'll have 7 projects under contract here shortly. And it's just exploding, and it's fun to be a part of it. It's fun to be a coach. It's fun to listen and learn from them. And, I just enjoy that. And so there's multiple businesses like that, whether it's a bank or whether it's a manufacturing or whatever, that I enjoy, and I enjoy being involved in. And then the final piece, which is an important piece and what you're involved in, is the real estate component. And I've had some time, I own different properties for different reasons. Here where I live, which is outside of Traverse City, Michigan, we're involved in a 40-unit condominium complex that's being built, and a strip mall, which when you hear strip mall, you might be like shaking your head, like, really? You're going to get into strip malls in this day and age, in this era? But this strip mall is anchored by Home Depot and Walmart with PetSmart and all these major stores in there. And it's the only one of its kind in the area. So
Brilliant.
it's not going anywhere. And it's just,
Yeah.
it's just booming, and it boomed all through COVID and all that.
Yeah.
But the syndicates are what I really like, to be involved with folks like yourself and being able to be, when you find good people that are running honest, ethical companies and investing in areas that you want to be in, which is in real estate, but now you're going to break out the real estate. What is it? Well, it could be in the hotel, it could be, in buildings and such, commercial real estate and residential. And I like the residential component, which is very hot right now, and involved in that around the country. And that's another piece of it. So the diversification you can hear from the portfolio standpoint, but then you can diversify in real estate, and you can diversify geographically and so on to make sure that you're covered. And one of the things that's important for me right now, I didn't know this when I started, but right now is the dividend. So a lot of the things I do is to drive that dividend or that monthly or quarterly income to be able to help without having to cash things out or do things as you're building a lifestyle. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at these deals, talk to me a little bit about how you evaluate or underwrite, or what's your decision-making process like? What are some red flags for you? And what are some like, wow, this is a great deal?
Yeah, it's interesting because it all starts with the people. So I've been referred to the companies that I do business with.
Oh, good.
So that is a big deal to me. If somebody has had a track record with somebody, so right off the bat, it's the human connection. And for anybody in business, any business I'm evaluating, anything that I do, the companies that I invest in that we've talked about, it's all about the people. Well, you get to know those people, and you get to know their drive and their passion, their desire to succeed. And the likelihood of success goes up exponentially. If you find you have the same core values and the same belief system, that goes up exponentially. And obviously, then you start to take a look at the business model and the marketing, and is there a need for that? So when it comes to real estate, it starts with the people. And I've had an opportunity to interview with the different syndicates that I've been working with. And as they learn what's important to me and I learn what's important to them, you start to build that synergy. So that all comes from first being referred in. Secondly, then you do an interview and have that conversation. Then when a deal comes out, you start to take a look at the numbers on the deal, and you start to understand how much of it is being leveraged, how much is paid out, depending on what you're looking for. Some may not be looking for dividends, but I do. So how much is there? What's the likelihood of it occurring? Who can plan interest rates going through the roof in 18 months, right? So, but you try to look and project out and see where it is. The overall project, when is it likely to turn over where we get our money back, where they either sell or refinance or whatever the case. All of those things play in to a process of evaluating. And there are many, many that we turn down on a monthly basis. And try to be very selective in what we get involved in. And then once you find those great teams, those great people, those are the ones you want to continue to invest with.
Excellent. So can you share a story in your the evolution of your investing literacy where maybe it didn't go so well, or something that you learned a lot from, or you were like, man, I wish I would have done this different, and now it's affected how you do things in the future? Any memorable learning experiences?
Yeah, I mean, from a business standpoint, I've been very fortunate. And so far, from a real estate standpoint, I've been very fortunate. But I have in the stock market as recently as this year, where I'm trying to think of the name of the bank I just lost at the top of my head that just went out, the Silicon Valley Bank, SVB, I think is the name of it. And I had invested relatively heavily into that. It had a lot of high marks. It was an exciting opportunity, and it completely imploded. And that's one of the things that I would say and it probably would not have a decade ago. But with the internet and this literal run on the bank is what created the problem. So I think that, and there were other problems aside from that, but that really, moved things along quickly. But I think that one of the things to understand as an investor is you will lose. You don't hit a home run every time. Be really happy with singles and doubles. There are occasions that you will lose. The real estate that I've been involved in and that I'm involved in right now, some are doing very, very well. Some are struggling. Some are continuing to pay dividends. Some have halted paying dividends. It's a process, and you're not going to be 100%, all the time. Be prepared. And I think this is what needs to be taught at an early age. People are fearful of investing because they're fearful of losing. And you can take a look at the stock market at any given time, and you can almost count on a 10% correction every year. And when people see that, they freak out. But you just got to know it's coming. And, real estate's no different. Look at what we've just gone through. This is unbelievable with the interest rate hikes the way that they are. But what it does is it also will weed out some of these syndicates and some of these companies and create opportunity. There's always opportunity for folks that weren't planning ahead, looking ahead, thinking about the what ifs, and that will create additional opportunities. So I don't know that I answered you completely, but I can tell you that SVB Bank was a big loss this year.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up a good point. And sometimes when I'm coaching new investors, I really challenge people to kind of assess their risk tolerance and what kind of assets that they're investing in. And some folks have longer term equity goals. Some folks like yourself have, shorter term cash flow goals. And so that will determine the kind of asset that you ultimately invest in. So it's not like straight across the board, everyone does the same thing to get the same outcome. So I think that's helpful too. And understanding that, you've said it in so many ways, but all investment is a risk. And so deciding the best way to take the risk with what expectations you come in is important too.
Correct.
So you've mentioned core values a couple of times, both for yourself and those who you work with. What are some of the core values that you have operated in your lifetime and your business over that rise to the top? I'm sure there's many.
Well, part of it for me is my reputation is incredibly important to me. So when I'm out there meeting with a client, they need to know that I am an honest, ethical individual that will do anything on their behalf to make things right or to do the right thing. And that's incredibly valuable. I had a large client. We were doing something that was relatively unique back in 2014. So most of the phone systems were not hosted in the cloud back then. And what was hosted wasn't necessarily high quality. So I had a client that knew they would get government money if they did it that way. And so we decided as a company to build our own. So we built our own hosted environment. This was for about 1,400 users. And we put everything in place and we proposed it, part of many, many companies that were proposing a solution. And when they made the decision, it came down to, we in the technology sector are trying to tout how great our technology is, and it never fails. And it's, oh my gosh, it does everything, and it'll wash your clothes too, and whatever else you want it to do. Okay. At the end of the day, and when I asked them, I was actually in Denver when I'd asked them this, I was on the phone with them, and they said, we just made the decision to go with you because we knew that if we needed anything, you would be there. So from a core value standpoint, from my standpoint, the honest, ethical behavior is top. And it's not just treating the clients that way. Our employees were so loyal. We were always looking out for how can we do more. And it was never about taking things away as much as it was about, if we tweak this over here, can I give you more over here? So what's really important to you, and how do we build this out the right way? So I think that's the primary driver of everything in my world, is just that honest, ethical, communicative behavior. Treat everybody, with a great deal of respect. You meet so many folks and you have no clue, which means logically, anyway, you should be treating people like rock stars, no matter where they come from or who they are. And that's another that I think is real important.
It's so good. I also think that's very much in line with playing the long game in relationships with people. It's not just looking at people of what you can get out of them as a client or an investor or, what they can do for you, but truly meaning in a genuine way that you really want to just add value.
100%.
Stick to your core values. I have found so many times in business over and over again, it wins me influence, things that I never even set out for, because it's genuine. And I'm always surprised by it, which I shouldn't be, but I love what you said, and just how your reputation is so important and how you've cultivated over years. So, so Steve, what's next? You are retired. You mentioned something to me when we met in person about your passion to help other people come along. What does that look like for you? And how do you go about doing that?
I am going to stay active in the business community. I have been active in a variety of universities over the years, on boards at a small private school in Adrian, Michigan, and then on the business advisory board at Eastern Michigan, where I went to school. I've spoken at different universities, including out in as far out as San Diego State, and have enjoyed that. Developed an entrepreneurial program at Eastern Michigan University, which I've enjoyed. But I'll be an investor. I'll be coaching. And what I mean by coaching is coaching business people that are looking to succeed. I'm getting in programs here up in the Traverse City area. They have a kind of a think tank, and I'm involved in that. And will continue to evolve as a person, as a business person, as a father, a husband, and a soon-to-be grandfather.
Oh, congratulations. That's exciting. Yeah, that changes everything when that phase begins. So, well, that's amazing. I just want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and also your encouragement, I think, to young entrepreneurs and folks who are looking to figure out their way in building a business. So, Steve, it's been genuine and it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you for the time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Daily Real Estate Syndication Show. Again, my name is Dina Berg, your host for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a blessed day.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.